Good morning and welcome here to my garden in downtown Winnipeg, in West Broadway specifically. My name is Laura and I've been gardening in this space for 21 years. So I'm going to talk to you this morning a little bit about kind of the 101s of gardening, things that I think are important. So I'm going to talk about the basics, and we're going to talk about raised beds and water and composting, and then we'll wind up. So my garden faces south and west, and that's important in that it leads us to a discussion of analysis of what your space is like. If you have 6 to 8 hours of unimpeded sunlight in the space where you want to grow, then you're on your way to a great garden. If you're dealing with things like shade from fences or buildings or trees in your yard that you have to contend with, then you're going to want to rethink possibly the things that you want to grow. Tomatoes and peppers and eggplants will do great with 8 hours of straight sun, but if you have part shade for part of the day, or if you're in a fairly shady area, then you're not likely to have a lot of success with those types of crops. So something like greens or roots or peas or something is going to be probably something that you're going to have better success with. But the point is, do your analysis so that you know what you're having to contend with. And your access to water will also be important to your success. So, do you have a tap available where you're gardening, or are you able to set up rain barrels off of your eaves to collect rainwater for your garden? That will help you achieve success in your garden. What is the soil like in your area? If you live in the Red River Valley, you have clay Red River gumbo, which is going to take a ton of amendment in order to be a good growing medium for you, which leads me to raised beds, which is what we use here because of the types of soil that we have, and for a few other reasons. We'll come back to that. Grow what your family likes to eat. Your family loves peas and carrots and tomatoes. Grow those if you can. Do they love beans and broccoli? Have at her. But maybe don't grow 45-foot row of eggplants if no one in your house likes eggplant. So keep that in mind. Seeds. Seeds are an excellent economical way to grow a garden. They have usually in a given pack of seeds, which probably retails between $1.50 and $5 depending on what you're wanting, more seeds than you can use in a particular year, and so much possibility and genetic information that it is actually wonderful. So seeds, you can buy them online, you can buy them at your nursery, you can buy them at a big box store. Doesn't matter where you buy them. They all generally come from very reputable companies, and all of the cultural information for growing that particular crop is on that package. Read the package. Keep everything in mind that's on that package. They're not snowing you. That information is crucial. And also keep in mind that Manitoba has likely only about 90 frost-free days between the beginning of June and mid-September before we have frost. So you need short, cold season crops. So keep that in mind when you're buying your seeds. And if you want to grow warm season crops, you need to buy them from a nursery already started, or you need to get into the business of starting your own seeds. I start my own peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, herbs indoors in the wintertime, and harden them off over May, and then get them into the garden. And so that's something to do if you have a few years of growing under your belt and you feel confident. Then that's something that you could work on in the future. Further on to gardening, it's a commitment. You can't just plant it and leave. You need to be around because it's going to need your attention. It's like a pet or a child. You're going to need to water it. You possibly will need to fertilize it. You will possibly, have to contend with pests. So all of these things need to be considered. So we're going to segue over to raised beds and why raised beds were a great choice for us. When we built this garden in 2011, we initially used untreated wood, and it lasted 8 years and then rotted, and then we needed to decide on a longer term investment for our beds, because I wasn't really interested in having to do that every 8 years, and I was 8 years younger, in 2011. So we opted for galvanized steel stock tanks, and they come to hold water for animals. They come with a port in them to drain them, and they should last 20 years. So those, a little expensive, but the upfront cost should be borne out by years and years of hard use. So raised beds, fantastic, because they warm up faster in the spring. They're free draining, so they're not going to sit cold and wet and unusable in certain parts of the year. You control the mixture of components that you put into your soil. So, you can buy a 3-way mix from a nursery, or a 4-way or a 5-way mix. You can add your own compost. You can add manure. You could add shredded leaves. There's all kinds of things that you can add to increase the nutrients and the tilth and the porosity of your soil. So those are things that I love about raised beds. You also are controlling the water that goes into it. So when we get a heavy rain, these things don't stay sodden. The port at the bottom, eventually it filters through and will drain out, and the soil will be nicely moist but not soggy. However, in droughty years, like the last 2 years that we've been having for sure, you need to pay attention to your plants and water appropriately. I tend to stick my finger in up to the second knuckle and see whether or not it's damp enough. And in a really dry year, we're watering kind of every 3 or 4 days. Depends on how hot it is during the day and how windy it is as well. So keep that in mind. Mulch. Mulch is your friend. We put shredded leaves on the beds last fall, and then just peeled it away a little bit and planted into it, and it is helping to keep the soil pretty nice and cool and moist, even in this wackadoodle temperatures we've been having. Okay, so from raised beds, we're gonna mosey over here and talk about rain barrels. I'm a big proponent of collecting rainwater. Using city water is expensive, it's cold, it's chlorinated, it's really convenient. It comes out of the tap attached to your house, but it does come at a cost. So if you can collect free water from the sky off of your roof of your garage or your house, and keep it for when you need to water your garden, then it's well worth the investment. I think I paid, I want to say, about $100 for this rain barrel from Lee Valley 8 years ago. It looks as great as it did and functions just as well 8 years on. We also have 2 of these 1,000-liter totes. They're recycled. They were used for food products, like bulk food products. We bought them from Paul's Containers about 8 years ago, and he delivered them. I think it was $99. It may have gone up by now, but those things have saved my bacon year in and year out, having that capacity on the yard and the ability to hold that water for when we need it. So, if you have the space, if you have the ability to redirect your downspouts, do it. Now we're going to talk about compost. So, in my mind, all composting is good composting. There are many ways that you can compost. You can compost in a free kind of pile in a corner of your yard that's kind of a little bit disused. You can use an earth machine, which is the little black plastic composters that the city would sell you. You can buy a compost tumbler. You know, you could do something like this. David and I built these. This is a rebuild of our initial one that was done in 2003. We did these ones in 2011 in cedar, and we expect it to last 20 years. And I love it. The original design is for 3 bins. We don't have space for 3 bins, and it should be like your browns, your working side, and your done side. So we keep our browns over in another space, and we collect all the fallen leaves we could get, plus whatever we can nab from the neighbors. And then with 4 adult people eating in our home, we have ample fruit and vegetable scraps. And as long as you keep your greens and your browns in balance, then it doesn't become anaerobic. And as long as you're keeping it moist enough, like a wrung out sponge, so not super wet and not totally dry, and you're turning it, then you should be able to get 2 servings a year out of your compost. So I empty it in the spring, and then I empty this one in the fall into the beds, and then we fill this one up again over the winter, alternating greens and browns. We keep a number of bags of leaves over for that purpose, and you know, some years fill it right up to the gunnels, but it always, as soon as it starts to melt, then it will start to sink, and then you can start turning it, and it heats up pretty quickly. So also no dairy, no bones, no kind of fat or meat into your compost, because your home compost is not going to heat up sufficiently to break those down, and you have the possibility of attracting vermin to your garden. So that final kind of things to talk about, permaculture. So if you have the space and you can, I really advocate for planting permanent fruit and vegetable crops in your space, because that's something that you don't have to do again and again. So whether it's this cherry shrub, or apple trees, or rhubarb, or asparagus. In the front garden we have plums and apricots and ascaps. There's all kinds of ways to incorporate food into your space and into your life. And my final kind of wrap up is, this is supposed to be fun and pleasurable, and so I advocate for, relax. You're going to have so many variables to contend with, and it can be a little stressful at times, but don't let it get to you. Enjoy the sun on your face and the soil on your hands, and the time spent outdoors, and have fun with it, and build a community, and eat what you grow.